And welcome back to episode number 66 of Raise the Banner podcast. It's the somewhat devil episode, 666, but it's just 66 of Raise the
Two,
Banner podcast.
we have
Uh,
two thirds of your co-host and 2/3 of Satan, apparently.
yeah, 2/3 of Satan, 2/3 of your co hosts here. Zach's away with some family matters. So it's tonight. It's myself, Matt Couture, here with Benny Ballgame Dearth. Ben, how you doing?
Great. I woke up for a second day in a row, reassured of who the true, although I don't think he would have been usurped, but the undisputed, like no legitimate conversation that anybody other than Tom Brady remains the greatest quarterback of all time.
I will say it was a good feeling waking up on Monday morning. I think as Patriots fans, you kind of can't help but like root against Mahomes because he's the biggest threat to Brady's throne.
That is correct.
Him losing and then losing in the fashion that he did, that I can't lie, that was pretty nice waking up on Monday morning.
It was glorious. I was very gleeful on Sunday.
Yeah, dude, we at halftime we both kind of said to each other like, "All right, like this is nice."
But they got to keep their foot on the gas.
Yeah. And we both I was typing out I want to blow out or something like that, and you were like, "I want to blow out." I was like, I agree.
Yes.
Like I didn't want a scenario where Mahomes made it close and comes out and lights up the second half and like he just barely loses, like something like that. Like the way they lost.
Kind of like how Super Bowl 57 unfolded, where like the Eagles, because the Eagles, aside from Hurts giving them 7 points in the first half, I don't know how much you remember Super Bowl 57. I have a steel trap for this apparently. I wish I could remember other things the way I remember football events. But the Eagles were up 14-7 second quarter, late first quarter. No, it had to have been second quarter. I don't think they put up 21. I don't think 21 points went up in the first quarter a couple years back. But it was 14-7 Philly. And they had started a drive. They were probably at like the 35-ish yard line. And Hurts tried to make a play happen and literally just dropped the ball next to a Chiefs player.
Yeah.
And they scooped it. It was Nick Bolton, who hopefully will be a future Patriot. That would be nice. Loved him coming out of college. Wouldn't mind him wearing a Pats uniform. But I digress. Scooped and scored to tie the game. So aside from that, I mean, it was 24-14 Philly at halftime. Could have easily been, 27-7, 27-10.
Yeah.
31-10, 31.
That second turnover at the end of the second quarter, that when AJ Brown scored to make it 24-0, like kind of really put me at ease.
I still wasn't feeling good.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. But anyways, all right, we'll get into that whole conversation. I do want to start off with the Red Sox. Obviously, I want to take a second to address the report that I guess you could call it that I put out there last night. I don't claim to be some reporter. I don't claim to I got all these inside sources, all the this type of shit. No,
maybe you should.
I mean, I have a few guys over the last couple of years that I've been able to connect with, have conversations with, and occasionally I get nuggets about. Really, it's only Patriots and Red Sox at this point. I really don't have Celtics or Bruin sources or anything like that. But I was basically told, plain and simple, that the Red Sox have a structure of a deal ready to go in St. Louis. Does that mean that every aspect of the deal is in place and agreed to? No. What I was told that it is, the players of the deal is basically, for the most part, in agreed to. Financially, I think Jeff Passan kind of also emphasized this today, that the money aspect of it in Arenado's contract is obviously probably the biggest factor in all this. Is how much they're gonna eat of it. What I heard was 15-ish million, about 5 million a year over the next 3 years. We'll see if that ends up the case.
So,
this
hold on,
conversation.
pause.
Okay.
Are you saying that's what St. Louis is willing to eat, or that's what the Red Sox want them to eat?
What I had heard was the number was around 15-ish total million.
Right, but meaning that's what the Red Sox are asking, or that's what the Cardinals are offering?
That I don't know.
Okay,
that I'm not sure. I would assume that Boston wants more. Passan even made the comment about maybe like half the remaining salary, which I believe is 53 total. So, 26 and a half roughly.
okay.
So obviously if there's wiggle room on that 10 to 12 million dollars difference, we'll happen to see. But basically, like I said, what I had heard was that they have the structure of a deal in place, meaning, the players for the most part are agreed upon. Maybe the financials are close, and basically that if Bregman does not happen, Boston will turn to Arenado and try to hammer out the final details of that deal. Like I said, I'm not saying that they have a deal agreed to in place. I'm not saying that. I am saying that the structure is in place to say if Bregman doesn't happen, excuse me, my dog is
chewing on a duck toy.
Chew toy. But if the Bregman deal does not happen, they're going to turn to St. Louis and try to get that Arenado deal completed. I don't know a ton of details. I've heard a little bit of names that are involved, but I'm not going to push out names just because I've heard it one place and until I hear it, confirmed in other spots, I'm not going to push those names out there. But, all things together, Ben, where are you on this, on this whole Bregman talk? And if so, potentially the Arenado talk.
So I'd be happy with either player. I don't see how Bregman happens, if I'm being truthful. From what little I've heard and what I understand, is that the Red Sox are on the lower end of the years that Bregman has been asking for. There was a recent report that they were offering a 4-year deal along with the Cubs and the Tigers, and that there was a question that maybe Toronto was offering 5 or 6 years, but that the general consensus was that the dollars were not anywhere near what Bregman's been asking for, which has been kind of where I've been at. My initial thought, when I had heard that the Red Sox offer was on the lower end, I was kind of imagining something like a 3-year deal, maybe a 4-year deal. So I don't foresee that happening. There hasn't been a ton of movement, from my understanding. So having said that, until today, and it seems like full disclosure, right off the bat, didn't really think there was much, because when you had posted on X about this, I didn't give it a ton of credence because my immediate gut reaction was, well, there's a report out there that the Red Sox more or less assured Rafael Devers that they would not move him. That part of his contract negotiation when he signed his extension, which was 2 years ago, right? They signed him, or last year, whatever it was, that there was some assurances, whether it's written into his contract or not, which I don't think it would be, but they gave him some verbal assurances that it wouldn't be, we're going to sign you to this mega deal, lock in long term, and then we're going to kick you off at third base. There were some assurances there that he would remain at third base in a defensive capacity. So that's been kind of rattling around in my head with any kind of thought that or report that comes out about the Red Sox making a move on a third baseman. I immediately default to, well, I get it's Arenado, and he's arguably at this point, he's probably a top 5 defensive third baseman. You could probably argue for other people at this point, but at the peak of his career, best defensive third baseman in baseball. That even for somebody like Arenado, like if the Red Sox made those assurances to Devers, would they go out and get him? So that's been kind of on the forefront of my mind of, well, the Red Sox assured Rafael Devers they weren't moving him off of third base. So, it just feels like it's, kind of smoke that somebody's just throwing something out there for clicks, or just to, they heard some rumor that has some partial truth, but there's really nothing there. It seems as if through a little bit of more digging on my part that, it is a legitimate report. So with that said, defensively speaking, it's a huge upgrade for the Red Sox. Devers he's good at making great plays and bad at making the routine plays. They're not paying him because he's a good defender. They're paying him because he can hit 35 homers this season when he's fully healthy. So in a vacuum, I'm definitely pro bringing in Arenado for the right price. Looking at his contract, and to my understanding, baseball is a little bit more straightforward with, what the money owed is versus other sports. I don't know the exact figure. His cash values, according to what I'm looking at, for the next 3 seasons, respectively, are 21, 16, and 15 million. Feel free to chime in if those numbers don't sound correct to you, but I'm pretty sure those are correct.
So, yeah.
So you do the math. That is, 21 and 31 is 52 million over the next 3 seasons, which even for Arenado at this point in his career, to me, is not like exorbitantly expensive. So if the structure is around the players and they're haggling around the money, that doesn't necessarily feel like a massive roadblock. It's a little concerning to see if they can hammer it out because, ownership still to this point has been reluctant to go above the luxury tax. I'd have to look up Red Sox payroll. So Matt, if you want to do that real quick, just to confirm, last I looked, they were at 208 million, and the luxury tax this year I think is 241.
It's something like that, yeah.
It's somewhere in that, right? So if you add Arenado this year without St. Louis taking money, that number becomes 229.
Yeah.
And then obviously whatever it is for the future, I don't know what their 20, 26, and 27, early look ahead payroll numbers look like, but they could make the money work. It seems like most teams that have been connected to the Arenado conversations have wanted St. Louis to eat some of that money. But I think big picture, if they can get it done, because if they sign Bregman, which again, I'm still in the camp that it's not happening because I don't think that it's going to get to a point where his asking price and the Red Sox offer are close enough that they can find common ground. So if they're going to make a move, I would expect it to be Arenado at this point. With Bregman, it wouldn't be to play third. They'd be signing him and probably put him at second base unless, somebody gives them a reason to put him in third.
He should play third.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. He has played second, can play second. But for somebody like Arenado, it makes sense to have a rotation with him and Devers between DH and third.
In first.
Yeah, I mean,
not Devers at first, but I think Arenado could seamlessly transition to first to the point where you could basically have him play like 2/3 of games at first. I mean, at third and first, like combined. And then like Devers gets 1/3 of the games at DH and Casas gets 1/3 of the games at DH.
Yeah, I mean, while I'm sure he could transition to first, given his glove talent, I don't think it benefits you to put him at first when your best defensive lineup is Arenado at third, Devers at DH, Casas at first base. Like, yeah, you can rotate through those three guys, but that's your best option defensively. Sure, if Casas needs a day off and you've already given days off to Devers and you don't have a choice, like, sure, could you put one of those guys at first? Yeah, but I don't think that's a top option for them. I think you'll see mostly Casas at first base when the other two guys splitting between DH and third. I think I would expect Devers to be the primary DH because Arenado's the better defensive third baseman. Couple that with Trevor Story, if he's healthy, you have a phenomenal defensive left side of the infield. You still got to figure out second base, although I'm sure they have a backup plan. Whether it's Kristen Campbell or is Vaughn Grissom still on the roster? So, I'm sure they could figure it out. But I'm not against the Arenado deal. I just didn't think that it would realistically happen because I didn't think that they would, given the assurances to Devers, wasn't sure that they would be willing to kind of renege on that and be like, hey, no, we told you third base is primarily yours, but we're about to add a 10-time Gold Glove winning third baseman at this point. So you're going to be DH more often than him. You're still muted, by the way. So I don't know what you just said before you laughed.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Like 10 times.
Ish, right? Somewhere in there. So I'm definitely pro Arenado. I wouldn't hate them, paying the majority of the deal, but I understand them wanting to have some financial relief from it. But I'm definitely in favor of it.
Yeah, and for me, again, this isn't any type of like inside knowledge or anything. This is just my opinion. I think that no matter what Breslow or Cora's not shying away from saying he wants Bregman or anything like that. But besides what regardless of what Breslow says, I think that they know that they need a right-handed bat. I mean, that's obvious. I think that everyone knows that they need another right-handed bat. So, when we discuss like, hey, what is Arenado gonna, what is St. Louis gonna take of Arenado's contract? I look at it and say the Red Sox are in a decent spot because they're playing hardball with both sides. They're playing hardball with Bregman for weeks and months now, and that could pay off. But they're also playing hardball with Arenado in St. Louis and saying, like, we could just sign Bregman and then you possibly have like no one to take Arenado, and they want to trade him. They undoubtedly want to trade him.
Yeah.
So, all things considered, just not. I would rather not. I would rather Bregman because you don't give up any prospects. And the names that I was told thrown around, like, not that they're like anything like overly special, but if you can just sign who is the better player, Bregman is the better player right now. And you can sign him without giving up any prospects. Obviously, I think that's the preferred path. That being said, like, I think that the Arenado and the potential deal there is right up there with the Bregman deal, in the sense that, I think that he's still a good player. Like, I think that he is a very good defender. He's going to be able to bat in the 270s, 280s. I think he can hit 20 dingers still. In the Fenway, the Green Monster is going to play for him well. I think he's really that bad. Like, he used to be the number 3, a 3 or 4 hitter. I think he's now more, a 5 or 6 hitter.
Arenado,
yeah. And that's not like, a 5 or 6 hitter is still very important. And I think the Sox could ideally need a 2, 3, or 4 hitter. If they land an Arenado and he sits there in like the 5 hole, like, that's pretty good. Never mind the fact that he's a very good defender. And he would drastically improve the defense that we've had at third base over the last, 6 or 7 years with Devers.
Yeah. So right now, this is take it with a grain of salt. Roto Champ does projected lineups and starting rotations. So as things stand currently, they project the Red Sox lineup as follows: Duran, Devers, Casas, Story, Yoshida, Abreu, Wong, Hamilton, Rafaela in that order. So you figure, trading for Arenado more or less puts him, in my opinion. You could theoretically hit him in the 4 hole, but you're probably putting him 5th or 6th.
Wait, so who is 3rd and 4th?
According to RotoChamp, they have Casas 3, Story 4.
Yeah, see, I think personally, if they were to trade for Arenado, this is just my opinion. I would put Arenado in the 3 hole. And like, is he an ideal 3 hole at this point of his career? No. But just average wise, I would rather him in the 3 hole than Story until Story shows that he can be back to his old self.
Yeah. Because you figure at this point in his career, and Fenway's more hitter friendly, I believe, than Busch Stadium. If that's even what it's called anymore. Has been for a long time, kind of aging myself there. You figure he's probably average-wise your 2nd or 3rd best hitter.
Yeah. You saying Arenado?
Yeah. At Fenway, Arenado should hit close to 270.
I would say maybe 4th or 5th. Like, you got Duran, Devers, and Casas, who I think are better.
I meant just on their average.
Yeah.
Average-wise, Arenado's probably your 2nd or 3rd best hitter on average-wise. So, again, RotoChamp projections has Yoshida at 278, Devers at 270, Duran at 268, and then Casas at 246.
All right, yeah. Average-wise, yeah. Well, and that's part of it, like, where I say, like, Arenado was, I believe, 32 years old. And I don't know. I just kind of feel like that's too young to just like assume that he's over the hill and done.
He's going to be 34 in 2 months.
Oh, so he's 33. All right.
He's a mid-April baby, so he'll turn 34 like 2 weeks after the season starts.
Yeah, and so I'm not like telling you like Arenado is going to be a stud for the next 4 years. No, I think he pretty confidently has at least 2 or 3 more years, like really solid years. Solid years. And by really solid, I mean he will play good defense. Like, defense ages fine. Like, you really don't like lose a step much defensively as you get older, especially like in mid 30s, maybe into your like late 30s, you start to slow down. But if he'll be 34, 35, and 36, I'm not really too worried about him at third base. And then, like I said, like I don't expect like 30 plus home runs, but if he can bat 270, hit 20 dingers, be a competent, good, solid bat, there's no reason why like that's not a very solid player for the Red Sox. And not even just the Red Sox, in the MLB. Like, how many players in the MLB hit 270, 20 dingers and play a very good defense? Like, when you really think about it, there's not many. There's really not that many. So this whole concept that Arenado is like, he's washed, he's over the hill, I just don't really see that as true. Now, do I want to be paying him $20 million a year? No. And so, like, I would be looking at St. Louis. Granted, the total number isn't even $20 million a year, but I would be looking at St. Louis to throw in money. But without naming names, let's just say the deal that I heard was in place happened. I think it's a steal for Boston, which kind of makes me like a little wary of how true it is. But I think that Arenado's value around the league is lower than it should be. I mean, he's still a good player. So just like think about the concept that if let's just say St. Louis ate $5 million a year, so that brought his $53 million down to, what is that? $45 million.
Well, he's owed 52. So you said, yeah, St. Louis eats 7. It brings it down to 45, which is 15-year average.
No, 5 million a year. So 15 million, 53
Brings it
minus 15.
brings it down to 37.
37. Okay, yeah, I don't know where I was getting. Yeah, okay, yeah, 37. Like, so 3 years, 37. So if you're getting this guy on 12 million a year, 13 million a year roughly,
It's pretty good.
that's pretty damn good. Like, that's pretty damn good. And I think it makes his value in terms of like at 20 million a year, you say Arenado is, I don't know if I want that. But at 12 million a year, that all of a sudden turns him into a solid value. So, like I said, the names that I heard mentioned, none of them are overly special. And so if you can get him for a couple mid-level prospects and, bring him in and he's the guy that hits 5th or, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the order for the next couple of years. And he's a good veteran leader. He plays a great third base. I am all for that. Like, absolutely all for it. And
Yeah.
and in some ways, I prefer it over Bregman. Now, like I said, like as it stands, I would rather just spend the money and get Bregman. Granted, I'm not going over 5 years for Bregman, and I've made that clear from the start. But if you could get Bregman for 4 or 5 years, yeah, I prefer that route. But like I said, people will, and for good reason, people will say, "Oh, it's the Red Sox being cheap." I understand that conversation, but Arenado is a very good consolation prize, if that's what you want to call it.
Yeah, and just given the fact that, and I don't know when his birthday is. Bregman will turn 31 this year, I think. I'd have to look that up. But, for the money, and I would say that, I'd be fine, for the averages, I'd be fine. Cheers to whatever other drink you're drinking. That's not the same as it was before. Is that a
No,
different?
I just put a little bitters in this one. Mai Tai.
Bitters shouldn't make it orange.
The bitters I have is like basically like an orange.
It's weird. So for me, I don't even know if I see Arenado as a consolation prize. Only because
I just said consolation because like it would be option 2, I guess.
Yeah, that's plan B, not plan A.
Yeah.
And I'd be fine. I think paying $45 million for Arenado. I think $15 million a year is a fair price for a player like him at this point in his career. I don't think that's an overpay. I mean, obviously, if you can get him for 12 or 13, like what you said, if the Sox, end up swinging this deal, and they can get him, get the Cardinals to eat $5 million a year, which brings him down to 16 million, 11 million, and 10 million over the next 3 years, respectively. That's a good buy for the Red Sox. It's a drastic upgrade at third base, and in some capacity, he's a middle third of the order bat.
Yeah, and when we talk about so just based off last year, the biggest hold that we've lost is O'Neill, right? And so he was a big bat, high strikeout, high home run. I think, what did he hit for an average? Was it in the 50s?
Who's this?
O'Neill.
Tyler O'Neill.
I almost said Patrick O'Neill. I couldn't tell you why.
I don't even know who Patrick O'Neill is.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you why. That's what came in my mind.
All right, so Tyler O'Neill's stats last year in Boston: 113 games, 241 average, 31 homers, 61 RBIs.
So when you replace that, if you put Arenado in the place of O'Neill, you get what? You get less home runs, higher average, lower strikeout rate. So it's not the same, but it balances each other.
Yeah, you are getting a right-handed bat with less power. But yeah. So like you look at somebody like Arenado. So last year again, and I think that this is kind of a rough ballpark of what you would get from Arenado at Fenway with slightly higher power numbers. But in 152 games last year with St. Louis, he hit 272. He's never walked a ton at any point in his career. Has never walked a ton.
Yeah.
325 on base, 394 slugging with a 719 OPS.
What's the strikeout rate? Do you know?
So I'd have to look at the fan graphs, but he struck out 92 times in.
Are you on Baseball Reference?
Yeah, I have his fielding pulled up in fan graphs. I didn't have him.
I was gonna say on Baseball Reference, if you scroll down and do like batting value, it tells you the strikeout percentage. I could pull that up.
Advanced batting strikeout percentage. So Nolan Arenado's K rate last year was 14.5%.
Oh, that's way lower.
Tyler O'Neill's strikeout rate last year was 33.6%. So
holy shit!
So it's
like you're striking out literally half as much.
And it's more.
So
like
you're telling me, all right? So when you talk about this and you compare them, we're talking a lot about Arenado because, like you said, like I don't view Bregman as incredibly likely, and I maintain by just my opinion that I think that Bregman wants Boston. I just don't think that Boston will end up giving him enough where I think he's going to chase the money. I hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping it's Bregman because I think he's a good defender. He hits for solid average. He hits for solid power, all that. But we talk Arenado, and we talk Arenado and the replacement there. Look at that difference. So we're getting that was my shoe. I don't know if you just heard a squeaky noise.
I
did. We get a lower power. O'Neill was on a pace that was 40 home runs or 45 home run pace last year. You're not going to get that from Arenado, but you're going to get You're going to get a higher average that I would say at least would be like 25, 30, 35, 40 points above. I think he can hit 275 with it very reasonably in Boston. I think he can easily hit 20 home runs, and with the Green Monster, maybe an increase in doubles as well. And then, like I said, he plays a Gold Glove, and not that O'Neill's a solid, pretty good defender, but Arenado's an elite defender.
Yeah. And
Arenado's an elite defender.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say though, if you want to compare the two guys together, the difference is, and this is going to make me sound like a total stat nerd. Tyler O'Neill will get on base more than Arenado will because he walks twice as much as Arenado does. So while he's not going to hit for as good of an average, so like for example, if you look at last year's numbers, so Tyler O'Neill hit 241 with a 336 on base. Arenado had a batting average of 31 points higher, and his on base was 11 points lower because Arenado doesn't walk and Tyler O'Neill does.
Yeah.
So last year, Arenado's walk rate was, O'Neill's walk rate was strikeout rate was astronomical. It was actually I don't want to say a career high because he struck out 40% as a rookie, which is absolutely insane. His walk rate last year was 11.2%. Tyler O'Neill, career high. And Nolan Arenado's walk rate last year was 6.9%, which is down near the bottom for his career. So you get, that's not quite double with the walk rate with O'Neill versus what you get with Arenado. But it is a significant difference because, again, now granted, I think that you might see a slight increase in batting average. So since he left Colorado, where aside from his rookie year, Arenado hit 267, and his last year in Colorado, he hit 253. So with those two seasons set aside, his lowest batting average in a season there was 287. So once he left Colorado, the hitter-friendly ballpark that it is Colorado, in St. Louis, he hit 255, 293, 266, 272. I think I would agree with you. I think he's closer to that 275, maybe 280 range, because he is a pull hitter. He'll take advantage of the green monster. But you're not going to get 30 home runs. You might get 20 to 25 home runs. He had 23 doubles last year, which aside from the COVID year was basically a career low. You might get 30 doubles out of him. So you're looking at somewhere between 50 and 60 extra base hits, which is fine because you're not asking too much of him. You're not saying, hey, you got to hit second or third and you got to drive in 120 runs. They're not asking him to do that anymore. So as far as what he would bring to the table, he fits a need for them. He's not the right-handed power bat that I think everybody wants, because it's also unrealistic to think that they're going to get.
I don't even know if I would say Bregman is that bat that everybody wants.
But here's the thing though, is like Bregman would hit 30 home runs in Fenway, in my opinion. I think Bregman's a 30 homer guy.
Bregman's closer to what people I feel like are looking for, but I still don't think he's exactly what fans want.
No, I mean, I think if you were to ask fans, if they're like, oh yeah, we want this guy as our right-handed hitter, it's somebody like a Vladdy Jr., who most likely is not going to play here unless the Red Sox wildly shift course and decide to actually spend money, because he's probably going to be a $450 million player. But he's that right-handed bat. Because he matches at Fenway. So I don't think you're getting you're not going to get a Tyler O'Neill type for a right-handed bat. Bregman's closer to it. I think he could be a 30 homer guy at Fenway. Yeah. And he's younger. But essentially you're adding a moderate power hitter with elite defense instead of getting a plus type of bat. And Bregman's close to plus. Plus to me would be like Aaron Judge is is legit plus, right? And I mean, he speaks for himself. But Bregman, you could get 30 homers, so that's plus. But he's not as good defensively. He's not a slouch. He's a better hitter. I'd say he's a B+ hitter with B+ defense. Arenado's an A defender, B- hitter. If you want to compare the two of those guys. So, but as far as the role that he plays, I think Arenado fits that role really well, and definitely fills a need. I know that's not a popular phrase on this show, is need versus best available player. But he definitely, he fits what they need in an essence of what can they and what are they willing to go acquire. Because if they really wanted to go get Vlad Guerrero Jr., they have the ammunition to go get Vlad Jr. It's not like they don't have it.
Technically, nothing stands in the way from going to trade for Vlad. If you went to Toronto and offered up Roman Anthony in a deal that, something's going to get done.
Yeah. And I don't think it would even cost that much, but right, they have the ammunition to go get a guy like Vladdy. They just choose not to because they don't want to give up the assets necessary, because Toronto's going to want the moon, and as they should, they're going to want to maximize their asset. But so they're going to,
and it's very reasonably likely that he's going to hit the market and you can get it for free a year from now.
Correct. So you're right. And again, that's going to come down to, are they going to be willing to, throw, 10 years and $450 million at him?
Correct. But you're not going to trade for him and then let him walk. You know what I mean? So
no, you would only acquire somebody like that if you have a verbal agreement that he's going to sign an extension.
Yeah. Or you openly know you're going to be throwing the bag at him.
Right. Right. But I mean, not to go down that rabbit hole, but I wouldn't, if I was the Red Sox, I wouldn't trade for Vladdy unless I had a handshake agreement on an actual extension. Not, hey, let's verbally agree that we will sign you an extension. I would be like, this is the contract offer that we need a verbal agreement that you will sign, whatever that number is. But anyway, I digress, back to what we're talking about. So what they can and what they're willing to acquire are different. Like we just talked about, they can acquire Vladdy, but they've not shown interest in doing it. So Arenado definitely fills a void. And he's still got a little bit of swagger, a little bit of an edge, in him. Hey, Cheddar, guest appearance. And not every podcast will bring their dog on, so
yeah,
count yourselves lucky. But yeah, I mean, yeah, he fills a need. He's a right-handed bat, elite defender. And it seems as if the only thing that would stand in the way is the dollar figure in which St. Louis is willing to pay him to get him here. Unless the Red Sox decide that they're gonna increase, whether it's because I'm gonna if I had to guess based on things I've seen on social media, they're probably offering like a low end starter / long relief type of guy, and a cup, 2 or 3 prospects, depending on the quality of the player. So unless they're willing to increase their offer and say, hey, instead of I don't know, maybe they offer like they say, hey, instead of this mid-level, this mid-level prospect, we'll give you somebody in our top 10, or instead of a fringe top, like a long relief guy, you're like, oh, like, here you can have Cutter Crawford or Cooper Criswell, increase, if it's a major leaguer involved, increase that. Then that's really the only way it's going to happen. If the Cardinals are literally like, no, like there's no way we're going to give you more the money that you want to ship him out of town.
Yeah. I mean, and this is just my opinion. If an Arenado trade comes down, I think it will be, looking in the realm of 2 to 3 mid-tier assets. And then depending on if it's just Arenado or another piece, like I said, if it's maybe just Arenado, maybe looking at 1 or 2 pieces. If it's a Arenado plus another piece, you're looking at 2 or 3 assets. And I would say my guess would be that the Cardinals eat minimum 15 million, maximum 21 million, meaning 5 to 7 million per year.
Yeah, I mean, have you heard a ballpark as to what they've been willing to eat for money at this point?
I don't know in terms of like what each side is willing to do. I've heard in the ballpark of that type of range.
Okay.
Like I said, I don't know for certain if St. Louis is only willing to do 5 and if Boston's only willing to do, $30 million totally or anything like that. I don't know the finances of what each side are looking for exactly. Like I said, it was just names that I've kind of heard.
Okay.
But
I meant in general, like how much, like in like conversations that the Cardinals have had.
That's more just like my guesstimate of, I think that the minimum would be $5 million a year that would get a deal done. But I also don't see St. Louis like eating like 30 million of the 53.
No.
So like I said, I put it in that like 5 to 7 range where I think would be the most likely scenario, and where they say like, all right, like we got the structure in place, like, all right, now we're haggling over money, and like let's just say Boston wants 7 and St. Louis wants 5. All right, like let's just meet in the middle at 6. But this is also where I talk about where like, there's a little more pressure in Boston that Breslow would probably make him want to see. Let's just say Bregman says, okay, Boston, you're out of the running. Now, like, all of a sudden, the kind of holding the cards that Breslow might have held, saying, like, oh, we'll just turn and sign Bregman, that kind of goes out the window. So Bregman, in my opinion, needs to be very quick in his decisions. It says, like, if he's getting the hint that Bregman is unlikely, he needs to quickly turn to Arenado and say, like, let's get this done. Because if Bregman announces he's signing elsewhere and it happens and everybody knows that he's gone and it's not an option for Boston, they kind of lose their power, their leg to stand on in negotiations. Now, St. Louis also wants to dump Arenado, but I think it's a power struggle between the two. I just think that I would say my likelihood, again, this is just a guess, like 65% Arenado, 35% Bregman in terms of like if it's going to be one or the other, the chance that happens. But
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I
want to transition into a little bit of Patriots. You're wearing a Patriots jersey, so it's about time that we get into that. Patrick Mahomes got his ass whooped this weekend against the Philadelphia Eagles. He went into New Orleans in the Caesars Superdome, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And the offensive line certainly didn't help him, but he was flat out not good.
No.
The interception to Cooper DeJean was his fault. The interception to Zach Vaughn was his fault. Multiple third down plays were his fault, where it was behind Kelsey. I think there was one that was not at the end of the second half, but there was one that was behind Hopkins as well. They got their ass whooped, and from the top to the bottom, from ownership to the head coach to the quarterback to the rest of the team, they got their ass kicked on Sunday. What were your overall thoughts on the game and how this, I guess, perceives the whole goal?
Yeah. So the game itself, to quote Big Jim Murray, this was probably my favorite non-Patriots Super Bowl in my lifetime. I would say in terms of overall entertainment value and my selfish narcissistic happiness, probably made me feel as good as watching Peyton Manning get his ass handed to him by the Seahawks 11 years ago. Yeah, 11 years ago. Those two are, from a happiness standpoint, selfishly, are up there. Just because, obviously turning the clocks back 11 years, Peyton Manning was really the only quarterback that stood in the way. I shouldn't say the only one, but he was the primary quarterback that stood in the way of Tom Brady's success. Obviously, we all know Brady lost 3 Super Bowls, but regular season, conference, tournament, Manning was really the guy that stood in the way. So seeing him lose was nice. So I'm trying to think, because at the time, so Peyton Manning at the time had 1 ring. He beat the Colts in Super Bowl 41, lost to Drew Brees in Super Bowl 44, and he was trying to go for his 2nd ring. And because he had the career accolades at the time, there were light conversations about, like, if Peyton Manning wins a 2nd ring, does he, I don't want to say pass, but does he equal the overall accolades of Tom Brady, despite the fact that Brady had more championships? Because at that point, Brady was 3-2 and Manning was 1-1. So I don't. That's why I was, happy to see Seattle win. So I mean, in terms of the game itself, again, pure entertainment value, A+. The game itself, from a football standpoint,
this is awful.
was pretty bad. So
because the Chiefs got their fucking ass whooped.
Yeah. I think so. I was reading CBS Sports. I messaged you this. I think it was this morning or last night. CBS added to their annual Super Bowl rankings, and they ranked it the 3rd worst Super Bowl of all time, which from a pure football standpoint makes sense, right? But selfishly, you've got.
I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed Taylor Swift getting booed. The once or twice you saw her, I enjoyed the fact that you hardly ever saw her on TV.
Wait, quick
Um,
side note: the halftime performance sucked.
Yes. Yes, the halftime. So it's funny. I thought about this afterwards, and while I'm not a rap music fan, I went through that phase when I was 13. I can respect musicianship and understand that those guys are talented. Most of them write their own songs. But the thing about a Super Bowl halftime show is there has to be the entertainment value of the game for me was through the roof. The entertainment value of the Super Bowl was in the basement. It was like, now granted, I was at somebody else's house. There were a ton of people, so I didn't hear a ton of the show. And again, I don't have anything against Kendrick Lamar. I don't listen to his music. I'm sure he's good. So I didn't have a ton of interest in the halftime show personally. But right off the get-go, I didn't understand why Samuel L. Jackson was playing Uncle Sam. Like, that didn't make any sense to me. I guess some of Kendrick Lamar's lyrics or some of his songs lyrically are politically motivated. That's my understanding. So I guess it kind of fits his overall vibe. But the game itself, there were certainly some selfish reasons that I enjoyed watching Kansas City, trip over their own shoelaces and piss their pants and not make it out of the starting blocks and get left behind. But from was the game good? No. Was it fun to watch? Yes. It was nice.
I don't know. I don't think I ever was going to be able to understand how some fans felt about the Patriots, but I do now.
So yes. So
I do now.
I know I'm an old man compared to you, but having like vivid memories. The Patriots dynasty started when I was 14. And so I'm trying to think.
5.
Yeah, so you were probably too young to at least and I'm not saying you're immature, but like in a maturity standpoint, in a life maturity standpoint, not comprehend what you were watching when you were 5.
Yeah, so when I was 5, I fell asleep during the Super Bowl and I got woken up by my dad. My for people that don't know, my family is diehard Patriots fans, season ticket holders through my grandfather since like 1964 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I got woken up. I was 5 years old during the 01 Super Bowl. I remember the 04 Super Bowl a little bit.
Yep.
Really, when I feel like it was around 06, 07 where I really started to get into like football. I was always a fan, obviously. Like
bad time as a Patriots fan to start paying attention in 2007.
My first game was
that was a rough Super Bowl to watch.
I think the first game I went to, I want to say it might have been 2005. I went to a Chargers game and the Pats got their fucking ass kicked. Like LT went off, like the Pats got annihilated.
Yeah, that mid 2000s decade Chargers team was absolutely loaded,
and they didn't win at all. But anyways,
probably if they had gotten past the Patriots in 06, probably win a Super Bowl that year. If they had a more experienced, competent coach back then, I think they would have been in better
shape. Who was
the
coach that year?
Marty Schottenheimer.
I was going to say Schottenheimer.
Yes.
Isn't the son, right? The son that's the Dallas coach?
Yes, Brian is now the head coach. But you think about I'm old enough now that I lived through the Patriots dynasty. And I don't count 2000 because Brady didn't play and they were god awful. But from 01 to 19, right? Brady's last season as a Patriot.
Greatest 20 years in the world.
Yeah, I'm old enough to have to understand what that was like. But I can say to a degree, I understand what people dislike the Patriots for because it was
Of
sustained
course.
success for so long. However, and I don't. I did a
Never
shout
mind.
out-
Wait, never mind when the fact that you add in like it's a complete BS that was Spygate. Like Spygate was like you can record from here, but you can't record from here.
Yeah,
That
it
was Spygate.
Yeah.
Never, and then Deflategate and all that. Like
Yeah, and
I
then
could imagine when you talk about like 2014, 2016, 2018, those championships. Like, if I was an opposing fan, like around the country, I would fucking hate the Patriots.
yeah,
Like, despise them.
yeah, and
So
and,
I get it.
yeah, and what I would say too, though, is the Patriots were hated and rooted against because of their sustained success. The thing about the Chiefs, and maybe this is, bias because I watched the Patriots dynasty from behind rose-colored glasses. I obviously, diehard, lifelong fan, so I was happy every year that they were winning football games. So maybe there's a little bit of bias here. I don't feel like there was any aspect of the Patriots dynasty that was viewed at from like a standpoint of being annoying. Like the Chiefs dynasty is annoying because you have Patrick Mahomes, who it's not necessarily him, but like his wife seems like she's crazy.
Yeah,
he like and
himself is fine.
And to a point, right? To a point, he had to tell his wife, who I'm sure she's a lovely lady, but she looks like she could be a little psychotic, a little over the top. Not psychotic. She looks like she's a little much.
Like I said, Pat Mahomes himself is fine. His wife has, if you Google resting bitch face,
yes, she has
RBF.
She is the poster child for RBF.
Picture. Never mind the fact that there's the have you ever seen the video from when they're at their courtside at a game?
I saw it. They were
very obvious that she says, Patrick said I need to stop with the resting bitch face.
Yeah, and she makes this like awkward like smile and the weird eye thing. But beyond Brittany, again, I'm sure she's a nice lady. She feels like she's over the top. His brother is also over the top. To a point.
He fucking sucks.
To a point.
Don't say over the top. He sucks.
There's a joke in there. Because I'm sure.
Okay.
Moving on.
He stinks.
So here's the thing about those two people. It got to a point where he told his wife and his brother that they were no longer allowed to go to his football games. So there's that.
Side note, I heard that Trump told people to tell Mahomes' wife, Brittany, to not speak to Taylor Swift during the Super Bowl.
Oh, I don't know why, but I would not. I don't know if I would have heard that. But that's a good segue because it brings me to Taylor Swift. And for all you Swifties out there, there's nothing more annoying than every single time Travis Kelce walks onto the field, breathes, smiles, catches a pass, makes a block, which is rare because he sucks at blocking, that they immediately they turn the cameras to Taylor Swift in a luxury box, having an absolute freak out attack of excitement because Travis Kelce did something that he's done almost every day of his life for probably the last, 34? Call it 30 years of his life dating back to Pop Warner. That was annoying to me. Like, could you imagine if every time Tom Brady completed a pass, the cameras panned over to Giselle just having an absolute freak out celebration in the luxury box? Like people
the only Giselle comment we know is he can't pass the ball and throw it at the same time.
Was that English?
He can't pass the ball and throw it at the same time.
Oh, well, that, and obviously when they beat the Falcons in Super Bowl 51, they panned to her. She was doing like a selfie video.
Yeah.
But like that was the difference between like the Patriots dynasty from 01 to 19.
Quick
That's the
side
division.
note: shout out Giselle for having a baby with her jiu-jitsu instructor.
Sure. Shout out to Giselle.
Cheers.
Congratulations. But the thing about now being an outsider, like I can understand why people didn't like the Patriots, with the one caveat that I feel like the dynasty of the Patriots from 01 to 19 was people were just sick and tired of seeing them, win at a high level every year, almost every year, right? Like they didn't make the playoffs in 02 or 08, but they won 11 games in 08. They missed out on some weird tiebreaker. Of course, that was the year that Brady did not play because of a torn ACL. That's why the people didn't like the Patriots. I think from a non-Chiefs fan, my dislike for them winning is it's multifaceted. The more Mahomes wins, and I will admit this, it's one of the reasons I root against them. The more Mahomes wins, the biggest threat he becomes to Brady's legacy. I know that doesn't bother
anyone who's lying about that concept is lying to themselves.
Well, so here's the thing, right? Like I talked to my dad about this before the Super Bowl. I think it was Saturday or early Sunday. Like to him, he doesn't look at games like that from a perspective of, well, I don't want to root for Kansas City because if Mahomes wins, it closes the gap on Brady. Like he doesn't look at it from that perspective. He actually rooted for Kansas City because my dad's loyal to old AFL teams, which is what he grew up his early years as a fan was pre-merger. But and I'll admit that it's one of the reasons I root against Kansas City is because, I want to see something different. Patrick Mahomes has never not played in a conference championship game as a starter. He was a rookie in 2017. I think in 2017 the Chiefs lost to the Patriots in the second round. I'd have to go back and look. But as the starter, he's never not made a conference championship as a quarterback. A couple times he's come close. Came back from a 24-point deficit against Houston a couple of years ago. I think that was the year he first won a Super Bowl. So he's come close a couple times, but he's never not played a conference championship game, and he's only lost the AFC Championship game one time. So that's there's that, the threat to Brady's legacy. And so, that's kind of where I'm at with, my, I don't want to say hatred, but like the reasons that I root against Kansas City, come from a football and a Brady legacy standpoint.
Yeah, like I said, I think anybody would be lying to themselves if they said that the Mahomes Brady aspect of it doesn't play a factor. And of course it plays a factor. I don't want, and I think unbiasedly, if you compare the two, that I think you're an idiot. But I'm not blind to the fact that like 5, 7, 8 years from now, like we could be having some type of different discussion. I just think now, even if he won his fourth, like I think you're having a different discussion. I mean, excuse me, even if he won his fourth, I don't think like he's there yet. Like I don't think he's overcome Brady or anything really that close to it.
No, but I think that it certainly, and I don't know if I'm just wildly off base with this, but I think that if he had won on Sunday, that to me would have been looked differently upon if he goes out, say he wins his fourth ring in the next 2 to 3 years, whether he loses one or not. Let's just say the next time he makes a Super Bowl, he wins. Let's say he wins Super Bowl 62 3 years from now. That gets him his fourth ring in 9 years ish, something like that.
Yep.
That to me would be looked upon differently than had they won on Sunday, and then 3 years from now they hadn't won again, because the caveat of the three-peat would then have existed, which is something, and I'd have to go back and look. To my knowledge, only one quarterback has ever won 3 consecutive titles, and it was Bart Starr in the 60s when he won the last iteration of the NFL championship and then the first 2 iterations of the Super Bowl. So
my problem with it is I guess kind of this. Like, Mahomes is great. I think right now he is probably standing at 4th overall. I think it goes Brady and then Montana, Manning, Montana, however you want to put it. If he had one,
no, man, it's Montana over Manning. It's not even a debate.
All right, so be it. But
anyway. in my opinion,
yeah. So no matter like how you want to put it, like I think that if he had won 4, it was just a matter of time, and I think almost it's still a matter of just time, where like people want to put and this is the world of social media, and it really drives me nuts, where like people would just want to be the first to say something. Right? They want to be the first to make the comment, first to make the statement, so that they feel like you feel like, I was the first one that made that comment. No, like Mahomes is inevitable for the top 3, right? I would probably put him 4 now. He's inevitable for the top 3 because I think that, Montana has 4, Mahomes has 2. Manning has 2.
Correct.
So if
hold on.
Retire right now,
real quick,
right?
Say Mahomes plays. This is his 7th year. Let's say Mahomes plays 10 more seasons. No, he's 30. Let's say, because I don't think his game will last until he's 40. Let's say Mahomes plays
8
more years, which means he retires at age 37 and doesn't win another ring and follows a rough trajectory that he's currently on, stats-wise. Can you realistically say now? Let's say that Mahomes never gets back to the Super Bowl.
Never.
Oh, that he goes the next 8 years of his career and never gets back. Ooh. Which means well, he doesn't win one, he doesn't lose one either. He just never gets there. Do you still put him over Peyton Manning? Again, assuming that by that point he will have comparable career statistics that of Peyton Manning, and he'll have more rings and the same number of losses. Because to me, I was gonna say, to me, championships are the defining characteristic. Like if Patrick Mahomes, and it's funny, I was talking to my buddy Justin about this earlier today, because we had kind of debated that, this whole, like, if Mahomes had won, would he be the greatest of all time? And I know, like, the fringe mouthpieces of certain, mainstream sports media, aka Nick Wright, will come out and say, came out and blatantly said that if Pat Mahomes won the Super Bowl, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, that Patrick Mahomes would become the greatest player in the history of the NFL. To which I would say, well, which I would say, no. You were also of the opinion, and I know it wasn't him, it was Max Kellerman, but he was also of the opinion that, like, Brady was going to fall off a cliff, and then Brady went on to win 3 out of 5.
Back in 2015.
Yeah, that was before that he went on the run of winning 4 out of 7 Super Bowls, 3 here and 1 in Tampa. Yeah. But like Nick Wright's in that same category, right? Where realistically, if Patrick Mahomes had won and he three-peated, yes, no quarterback has ever won 3 Super Bowls in a row. Again, it's been done before the Super Bowl was a thing. But that would be you saying that if Mahomes wins a Super Bowl and then retires, that he'd be the greatest quarterback of all time. And you look at that and go, well, no, you can't say that, because sure, he would have 4 rings out of 5 tries. He'd be 4-1. He'd be the only quarterback to ever three-peat, but he wouldn't have the career longevity to be in that category. But anyway, so we were talking about, and so how, like, it really was never a debate that if Mahomes had won, that he would become the greatest of all time. But I think that if he did win, you'd realistically have to say that he would he would have passed Manning on the all-time list.
Yeah,
you know,
if you double Manning's, I think that probably puts him over him. It's tough because I think Manning was better quarterback than Montana, but Montana has 4 and Manning has 2, and even the one where Manning won, the second one was, I mean, kind of in spite of him.
Yeah. So real quick, just to put it in perspective. So in let's see. Pat Mahomes has been a starter for 7 years, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay. So 32, 352. So Patrick Mahomes averages 4,621 yards per season. So if he were to play for 17 seasons, hold on. That puts him at, and granted, he's not going to average that number forever, but based on his per year average, he's on pace for 78,569 yards, which would put him third all time. And he would be roughly about 6,500 yards more than Peyton Manning.
I think so in a matter of just years, and this is where it's like longevity. So I always talk about the GOAT discussion as I try to simplify it. If the person retired today, where would they stand? And personally, I think that's the most fair way to view it. If the person retired today, where would they stand? And if the person retired, if Mahomes retired today, you would say he has 3 Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowls lost in 7 years. That is not top 2 over like all time.
No, I would agree with you, except
It's
just to play devil's advocate. If you look at his career accolades, again, as a starter, he has gone to 7 straight AFC Championship games, which I believe is the second longest streak of all time behind Tom Brady. He is 6-1 in those conference championship games. His lone loss came to Cincinnati in, I think it was 2021.
Oh, he lost to the Patriots.
I'm sorry. He is
5-2.
5-2. My mistake. 5-2 in those 7 AFC Championship games.
Well, so again,
lost to the Patriots, but like that to me is like, no. Is he top 2? No, but I would say that if Mahomes retires tomorrow, and again, and let's just say for the sake of the argument that he had won on Sunday, you would have a guy retiring with 4 out of 5 rings and having never not played in a conference championship game.
So which in 7 years to put him top 4 would be like he had to do insane things, which what he would have done. And which is also why I said, like, even if he doesn't win another Super Bowl, if he goes on and has another 7 great, like, good overall, high quality years, maybe makes 1 Super Bowl and a couple AFC championships, but doesn't win another one, he's probably in the conversation of top 2 to 3. So, and that's where I was like, let's just be respectful of the greats. Where in the sense of, like, if Mahomes retired today, how do you sit here and say Mahomes at 7 years played versus Manning at what, 15? I don't know, 16. How many total years did he play? Manning. 17 years. Like, I think it's disrespectful to the greats to kind of put him in that category of saying, hey, like, he played half the amount of time, but he's greater than you. And so it's like,
I would agree with you, Manning.
I would say the peak,
and for the record, Manning was 18 seasons.
Okay, so you could say, like, and this is the conversation between better and greater. Like, the peak of Manning, the peak of Mahomes arguably was his rookie year. I mean, maybe. Like, statistically, to compare that to greater, like when you talk about the greatest of all time, you have to consider the the length of the careers. So when you say, okay, Mahomes needs to win this and this, and a lot of it's longevity. Like I said, if he doesn't win another ring, but he retires 5 years from now and he has 5 good years, but he doesn't win another ring, like even those 5 years where he doesn't win a ring matters in the conversation. Assuming he had good years overall. Like, it doesn't have to be elite, but just good to elite, great years. That's part of the conversation. So, people, my friends and people want to call me biased in all this conversation. It's like, no, it's like right now, I think it's Brady, Montana or Manning or Montana, and then Mahomes. If 3, 4, 5 years from now, even if he doesn't win another ring, he may surpass them, in my opinion. But now, I'm going to be respectful to the guys like Montana and Manning who did it for that much longer.
Yeah, I just without another ring, I don't see how Mahomes realistically can pass Montana on the all-time list. For the same reason,
at 3 rings, I do. At 3 rings, I do.
But for the same reason, okay, that I didn't really believe that Brady had passed Montana until he won his 4th ring. Like, we were having the conversation because it was like, okay, do you look at Brady?
See, that's where I disagreed, and I'm going to be respectful to Mahomes. It was like at 3, and so what was this? 2013. Like at 2013, I was like, dude, like I get Montana won 4, but Brady's won 3. He's been to 5. Like I would say that even if he doesn't win another ring 3 to 5 years from now, Mahomes is destined for top 2, in my opinion. Like, it's just a matter of, I don't think he could even not win another ring. Maybe he needs to get to another title or something like that, but he could not win another ring, and I would probably, let's say 7 years from now, put him top 2, assuming he has like good years, like overall, like he's a good quarterback.
Yeah, but for me though, like I didn't say definitively that Brady had passed Manning. I'm sorry, that Brady had passed Montana until they beat Seattle in 2014. I didn't definitively say
fair enough.
Brady is better than Montana now. And the reason for that is the career numbers to that point were similar, and Montana was 4-0, no turnovers, multi-time Super Bowl MVP. So, like, if you looked at the whole body of work on top of
so what if they lost to Seattle, right? He played until 2019 and retired after the Patriots, but didn't win another Super Bowl, but had another 5 years of really good years.
It's Montana.
Ooh, see, I feel like that's a little too much emphasis on.
Okay, well, let me ask you this question: Who's the best NBA player of all time? Is it LeBron or MJ? Because by that rubric that you just gave, you would have to argue that it's LeBron, because LeBron has done it for longer with better stats, and despite the fact that he's sub 500 in the NBA Finals and has less rings than MJ. By that rubric, you would have to say LeBron is better than MJ.
So that, I mean, NBA is obviously a little different, but I struggle. For years, I was kind of like, oh, LeBron's going to pass like MJ, like LeBron's going to be the GOAT, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think LeBron has had a greater career, but Jordan has had, I don't know, but Jordan has had like a greater run over his time. Did MJ go 6-0? Is that correct?
Yes, Jordan was 6-0.
To go 6-0 in the NBA Finals, like that's pretty impressive. LeBron obviously Has it's
I'd
far
ha-
from-
I'd have to look at it. LeBron is 4-6.
No,
I
I
believe.
don't think it's 6. I thought it was like 4-4, 4 maybe something like that. But like,
Hold
yeah,
on.
I mean, like I at this point I'd probably lean Brady. Excuse me, I lean Jordan.
So hold on. So LeBron. So he has 4 rings, 12, 13, 16, and 20.
He lost to the Mavericks. He lost to the Cavs in I think.
Yeah, so LeBron's 4-6. He's been to 10 NBA Finals. He's 4-6.
Jesus Christ.
So he lost to the Spurs in 07. He lost to the Mavericks in, was it 2011?
Something like that.
He lost to the Mavericks in 2011. Then he won back-to-back titles, and then he lost the fourth one when Cleveland went 4 in a row. I'm sorry, he lost the 4th in a row. He lost to the Spurs. He lost to the Spurs in 07. He lost to the Mavericks in 2010. I believe he lost to the Spurs in 2011.
No, he won. He beat the Spurs, I thought.
No, he won one against the Spurs and lost one against the Spurs.
Okay.
Hold on, I'm gonna go.
All right, no, I don't want to get too like diverted into this whole conversation though.
But anyway, but like by that same rubric, right? You talk about like how much does winning factor in versus career longevity, right? Like you have that conversation, and I know we're not talking about
it's a bet.
But like you talk about a question like, is Phillip Rivers a Hall of Famer? Because and again, I know we're getting away from like greatest of all time quarterback, but that's a prime example of, are you going to reward him with a Hall of Fame induction because he played at the level he played at for such a long period of time?
That's the balance of it. So I think championships matter a lot, but I think longevity gets a little undervalued in terms of conversation. So Eli is a decent conversation. All right, so he won 2 rings. Overall, Eli
was not
average
good.
QB, like average. He's 117 and 117 overall, like in the regular season. Like he was a solid, maybe average, solid at best QB from 98% of his career. He had 2 phenomenal Super Bowl runs. That's gonna alone get him in the Super Bowl. I mean, in the Hall of Fame, excuse me. But like overall, he wasn't that great. But at the same time, he won 2 Super Bowls and he played for like 17, 18 years. Right?
Yeah.
So he's top 10 in most of these categories. So that's where it's like, all right, I think Super Bowls, wins, like championships matter the most. Longevity also has to matter. So when you talk about, all right, Mahomes has 3 championships in 5 attempts, 5 Super Bowls in 7 years, that's mighty impressive.
It is.
If he just played another 5 years of like pretty good football, he's probably in that top 2 conversation over Manning and over Montana. So that's why I'm saying like it's just like give it time.
You absolutely have to. But
yeah, and this gives it. This conversation reminds me of my buddy. This was like early years of Stephen Curry, and he was like, "Oh, Curry's the greatest 3-point shooter of all time," and I was like, "Listen, like he might be, but like you have to respect Ray Allen." And I was like 5, 6, 7 years later, I was like, "All right, like we can give him that throne." I think Curry's the greatest three-point shooter. But you have to like respect the longevity of what other players did. So that's why, in my opinion, like, all right, like, yeah, we can talk about Mahomes and what he's done in the first 7 years, but like Manning did it for 18 years. Like Brady did it for what, 23 years, something like that. Like it's
Yeah.
incredibly. In
Yeah,
Montana was what, I don't know, 15. Like it's incredibly disrespectful for the greats to throw out that conversation. So
I agree.
5 years from now, even if he doesn't win another championship, we could have a different conversation about Mahomes.
Yeah,
But
I think at that point you can have a legitimate conversation and go, and again, I let's just say 5 years from now he hasn't gotten back to one, because I think if you turn the clocks ahead 5 years, he's 34, going on 35. If he gets back there and doesn't win, that to me is more of a negative than playing at a high level for 5 years but over 5 years not getting
yeah,
there.
it's tough because all the conversations comes. I mean, if we're talking like truth about Mahomes, like I posted a stat that ML football like took from me, I guess you could call it. But I'll see if I can pull it up right now.
Is it the passing stats tweet?
Yeah, it's from the past 2 years, basically. Well, technically 2 years. And it was Mahomes' stats over the last 2 years, which was 39 games. And of course, Twitter doesn't want to load for me right now. But
I have it if you want it.
Go ahead.
So there is one player on that list that I would disagree with, and it's Derek Carr.
Yeah, I mean, not every player. I wasn't saying every player on that list. I was just throwing out like comparisons.
So this is what it is. So it's Mahomes compared to Cousins, Burrow, Carr, Baker, and Brock Purdy. So Mahomes over his last 39 games, 9,841 yards, 64 touchdowns, 28 picks. Joe Burrow over that same time span, 10,326, 82 touchdowns, 24 picks. Brock Purdy, 9,949, so 100 more yards, 62 touchdowns, 25 interceptions. So slightly more. So like that, like those two to me are basically the same. Less touchdowns, less turnovers, basically the same number of yards. Baker, 96, 94, 77 touchdowns, 29 picks. Cousins, 10,392, 66 touchdowns, 35 picks. And then Derek Carr, this would be the one that I would say that ML Football got wrong because it claims that Derek Carr had better stats than Mahomes. Carr has, over the same time span, 8,395 yards, 58 touchdowns, 23 picks. Yeah. So basically, yeah. But so
my conversation wasn't better, but it was the conversation of like, if you compare them to these guys, no one considers Kirk, Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, or Brock Purdy top 10 QBs, right? Or at least top 8. You can maybe put Baker in the 10 range, but like no one considers these guys elite QBs. So to put them in when you compare them to what Mahomes has done over the last 2 years, it's overall not that great. So again, big picture, like if he continues down this path, maybe it's a different conversation. But again, big picture, like 5-7 years from now, we could have a different conversation. But right now, I think it's disrespectful to Mahomes in Montana to put him number 2 overall. I think it's a slap in the face to like say, hey Peyton, you did this for the last 18 years in a very, very good QB, elite QB for basically the heavy majority of your career. But we're going to put this guy that did it for 40% of your career over you. I just think that's tremendously disrespectful.
It is. So I will ask you this question because this is kind of like where we're at this point. What would Mahomes have to do? Let's say he's got 8 more years left, plays till he's 37. What would Mahomes have to accomplish in those 8 seasons? And I'm not talking like total. Like, what would he have to do over the next 8 years on top of what he's already done for you to consider a debate that he is better than Tom Brady?
Ooh, I thought you were gonna say number 2, better than Brady.
Not that he's number 2 behind Brady, but
I would say he needs bare minimum 3 more Super Bowls to be in the conversation. But overall, like bare minimum 3 more Super Bowl wins. And he needs to be playing at a very, very high level for the next 8 years.
Okay, so let's say over the next 8 seasons, Mahomes finishes with, let's just say he finishes with 75,000 yards, which would put him third all time. He goes 3-1 in 4 Super Bowls, which makes him 6-3 all time. And I mean, you're talking about. I mean, I'd have to compare like the individual statistics about like league MVP, Super Bowl MVP, that whole thing.
But I mean, big picture, he's 2.
So right. But in order to have a legitimate conversation about him being better than Tom Brady, does he need a 7th ring? Does he need to win 7 Super Bowls for you to entertain somebody's opinion that he is better than Tom Brady?
No, entertain. No. If he gets 6, it becomes a conversation, and like there's so many variables in the whole conversation. Obviously, we can't get into everyone, but like he needs to at this point, after getting his ass kicked by Tampa and Philly, like I think it's pretty safe to say like he needs 6 to even get in that realm of conversation. And then at that point, you still have the fact that he got his ass kicked by 2 teams. Never mind, we'll see what happens if he loses another Super Bowl. And then the fact that like he has like he's just not in. He's not going to be near the numbers that Brady put up.
Right. So I'll answer my own question, and here's where and why I would disagree with you, because you presume if he gets to if say he wins 3 more rings, right? Like you presume he's gonna make the playoffs. Right now he trails Brady by 18 playoff wins, which means he would have to win at least 2 playoff games per season over the next 8. It would have to be more than 2, but he'd have to win. I don't know what the exact number is. 2.5. He'd have to win 2.5, an average of 2.5 playoff games per year for the next 8 seasons in order to pass Tom Brady in playoff wins. Brady has 35. Mahomes has
2.5 is a lot.
Right. So it's a safe bet to say that over the next 8 seasons, that the odds do not favor Mahomes in terms of passing Brady in playoff wins, Super Bowl wins, Super Bowl accolades, and career statistics. So if he is second fiddle to Brady in all the major statistical categories, wins, touchdowns, passing yards, and then you look at he doesn't have as many Super Bowl rings, he probably, like statistically speaking, will have as many, if not more, Super Bowl losses. And then he won't have the playoff accolades, Super Bowl MVP, playoff wins. Like if he's behind Brady in every one of those categories, how do you entertain a conversation that he's better than Tom Brady?
I mean, I don't know if you do. Like I said, it will depend on we'll see where things stand and all those aspects of it. But like I said, he needs to get to at least 6 probably to be even in the conversation of things.
See, I think 6 isn't enough. I think that
we'll see where things like I don't know, like we'll see where things stand.
Because here's why. If he gets to 6 Super Bowls, he's based on his current career trajectory, he will not throw more touchdown passes than Tom Brady. He will not have more passing yards than Tom Brady. He will not have more wins than Tom Brady. I mean, the playoff things, he's on a trajectory. He may not pass Brady in playoff wins based on his current trajectory. He might catch him in Super Bowls. But without 7 rings and overall better career statistics, to me, he can't pass Tom Brady without at least 7 rings. He can't.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Because if the conversation was if he has, say he's 6-2, but he passes, I mean, no one's going to touch Brady's passing record, which is 89,000 and change. So,
yeah,
like Mahomes would have to, like, say Mahomes had 90,000 passing yards, more touchdowns. I don't know what the number is. It's like I think Brady has like 570 some on regular season touchdowns, but like more touchdowns, 90,000 yards, and he has 6 rings. He wins 3 more Super Bowls, doesn't lose another one, so he's 6-2. So he has a better winning percentage in Super Bowls than Brady, and more like at that point, it's like okay, he has 1 fewer ring, he has 1 less Super Bowl loss. And he has better career statistics. Like that to me is the only way he has a conversation with Brady with less championships.
It's tough because there's so many other variables of it, but I mean, as it stands now, like after getting his ass whooped in 2 of the 5 Super Bowls, like he has good 3 rings, and that's going to put him in the top 5. But like he has, he was like fairly close after going into the Super Bowl. He knocked himself back after the Super Bowl.
It's funny you bring that
never
up.
got his ass kicked.
No.
He never even came close to getting his ass kicked in the Super Bowl.
He didn't, and I'll channel my best Felger and Maz, and I'll go devil's advocate for the sake of doing our show. Greg Bedard was on today, and they asked him this question of, does the fact that Brady never got embarrassed at the Super Bowl, does that fact?
It does.
And so the question to Greg Bedard was, does that is that a knock on Mahomes that
Yes.
that his 2 Super Bowl losses are bad losses? And Greg Bedard said no. And for this reason, he said in the big picture, it's going to reflect poorly on Mahomes that he no-showed in 2 Super Bowls. But that in terms of relative to Brady, he doesn't view it as knocking him down compared to Brady because, and in his opinion, he said that Tom Brady, and specific to his losses, I don't think you could make this argument overall in the 10 times he played, but in Greg Bedard's opinion, Tom Brady never played in the Super Bowl, never played a team as good as this Eagles team. So
I firmly
So in his opinion, just to finish my thought, in his opinion, he said that if Tom Brady, specifically in his losses, that those 2 Giants teams and the Eagles team that he lost to,
but that doesn't matter, dude. This is the Super Bowl.
We're not as good, and said that if he had played if he had played against those Giants teams and played the way that he played, but the Giants had a far more prolific offense, he's like, how can we sit here and say that the Giants wouldn't have beat them 30-14? It's like, you can't say that.
Yeah, but again, like we're playing for what it is. Like I'm not going to play all these different wild hypotheticals. Like you could play it within a reason, but not too much. Like and not to we could finish it up here. That like the fact of the matter is he got his ass whooped. Even in the 3 Super Bowls that Brady lost, like Brady put himself in the lead in both Giant Super Bowls in the 4th quarter.
Brady had a lead. Brady had a 4th quarter lead in every one of his Super Bowls.
Exactly. In the Philly game, he threw for 505 yards and had a lead in the 4th quarter, and they lost. Like
with no turnovers.
Yeah.
I lied. He got strip sacked at the end of the game, and that was the difference.
And so to put him in that conversation, like it's just not the same. It's just not even close to the same. If you're in the Super Bowl, you're a really good team, and either you're A, really, really, really good, or B, you're really, really, really hot. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And in both sense, the teams that are playing very well. So
yeah, and I agree. It's certainly it's nice. I understand Bedard's point, and I was only bringing it up just to play the devil's advocate and have the conversation.
You do love that.
I do. I am the king of the devil's advocate. But I think that it is somewhere between your stance and Bedard's stance. That is that like it is a little bit of a feather in Brady's cap that he was never embarrassed on sports' biggest stage. But at the same time, and again, this is my personal opinion, the only team Tom Brady ever played, and this is why I say it's a feather in Tom Brady's cap. It just may not be. Again, I don't think it's as big as, and I'm not saying you're making it a big deal, but I don't think it's as big as what you might think. I also don't think it's nothing like what Bedard thinks. Of the 10 teams that the Patriots played, of the 10 teams that Tom Brady played in his career, 9 as a Patriot, the only team that I think the Eagles are not this iteration of the Eagles were not as good as was the 2014 Seahawks team. But I think that in terms of, if you want to take like this year's Eagles team and compare them to the other teams the Patriots played including Tom Brady played, including the 2020 Chiefs. I would say that this Eagles team is the second most talented team that of the teams that Brady played, only behind the Seahawks of 2014.
I mean, the Rams were the greatest team on turf. Like they were
but like that defense was not anything special. Like the Eagles defense,
I know, but they were very good.
And so, I think you could make an argument that the 2016 Falcons offense was far more prolific than the 2024 Eagles roster. But to me, the Eagles defense is aside from Seattle's is the best defense that we've seen in the Super Bowl. Speaking only of the 10 teams that Brady went up against. So it isn't, and the reason I bring that up, the Seattle game is like, and given the circumstances in which he won, the Patriots beat the best defense in the NFL and arguably the best defense of the 2010s decade. At their peak, the Legion of Boom was the most feared, unstoppable defense we've seen, at least in modern football. I'm not going to say it's 85 Bears good, but and to win that game the way that he did, that to me is more of a feather in his cap of, you're down by 10 to arguably one of the top 5 defenses of all time with 8 minutes to go in a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
When you're reeling because they had, Tom Brady had been intercepted. The Seahawks had been unstoppable for the first quarter, the first 20 minutes of the second half, all the third quarter, they scored, they got the two scores in the third quarter. They, I forget. I don't think they scored in the fourth. That to me is more of a feather in a cap than it is like, Mahomes got his ass handed to him twice. I think, just to wrap up that point, I think the fact that Brady was on the other end of that first ass kicking is more of a, Brady's better than Mahomes because Brady outplayed him in all of their playoff games, which was an AFC Championship game in Kansas City in 2018. And then Brady outplayed him in the Bucs-Chiefs Super Bowl 4 years ago. Like that to me is more feather in a cap than to say, Brady never got embarrassed on the big stage and Mahomes has done it twice. I think it's, Brady, I think it's more the former than it is in a vacuum. Mahomes laid an egg, in 2 Super Bowls, so that knocks him down a bit. I think that in a vacuum, when you look at his career, it's going to matter more in the career conversation than I think it will in the GOAT conversation. Because if Mahomes wins 7 rings and has similar career accolades, they're not going to look at it. An intelligent football analyst is not going to go, but 2 of Mahomes' losses were huge no-shows in the Super Bowl. Like they're not going to look at it from that perspective, but they'll go, Mahomes won some Super Bowls, but he also didn't show up big time in 2 of them also.
Yeah. No, I mean, fair enough. There's a long conversation. Obviously, this incredible amount of variables, all of it. We'll see how things play out. At the point right now, I just think that Mahomes has a ways to go in the conversation. So
I agree.
All right, we'll wrap it up here. This is a long ass episode, but
do we want to do a state your take or no?
We'll push it to next week.
The only thing I will say is I do have to say that I was wrong. I do believe if you go back and listen to our NFL preseason episode, I do believe that I said that unfortunately the Kansas City Chiefs would three-peat. Which I was really close to being correct, but boy, am I happy I was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. That'll do it for this week. We'll be back next week. Hopefully Bregman is signed. We can end it there. Goodbye. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.